The conference will be held online, so if you have any questions, please use the Q&A chat site or the question on the conference section. And we are also hosting about 10 VIPs here on site. We're also following the quarantine guidelines set by the Korean government. So we kindly ask all of our participants to please follow them as well. We will start in just a few minutes. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, one more word of announcement, please. So in just a few minutes, session 3 of the 5th Digital at Sea Asia Pacific 2021 conference will begin. We kindly would like to ask you to please begin your preparations for session 3. We also provide Korean to English simultaneous interpretation, so please check the Korean and English links that were sent to you via email. We'd also like to request that this conference is being held under your consent, and if possible, we would like you to allow us to please show your faces on the conference screen. And if you have any questions, please use the Q&A session and the Q&A chat site or the website's conference questions section. The online studio is hosting some 10 VIPs and participants. We are following the quarantine guidelines set out by the Korean government, and we kindly ask our participants to please follow the rules as well. Thank you, and we will start in just about 5 minutes. Thank you. good morning and good afternoon. Bonjour, hola, 안녕하세요. And welcome back to day 2 of the 5th Digital at Sea Asia Pacific 2021 conference. My name is Ju-Yeon Cho, and I have been given the honor of being your MC once again today. So I have Mr. Hong right next to me. I believe that it must have been quite difficult in order to prepare for the conference because of COVID-19. Can you tell us about your experience?
Yes, and good morning and good afternoon. Thanks all participants for your joining second day the conference today again. Yes, of course, students, there should be some difficulties in organizing this online conference due to the COVID-19. However, beyond these challenges, I'm very happy to have a so fruitful result from yesterday's discussion, especially through the STM services and just-in-time arrival project. We discussed important role of digitalization for decarbonization in maritime sectors. And also, we discussed the necessity to carry out global testbed across the regions regarding to the digital data exchange through interoperable digital platform like MCP, as well as the international standard protocol messages and route exchange. All of these facts will be the paramount for the successful maritime digitalization across the regions. Today, I expect yesterday's presentation to be discussed in line with maritime informatics and also clusters in more detail. Thank you.
Well, with that, let us start with session 3 called the Core Technology and Standardization. Our session 3 will be chaired by Mr. Axel Han, the Acting Director of Office. So, Mr. Axel Han, thank you once again for joining us and chairing session 3.
Okay, Axel, good to see you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good to see you all, and best greetings around the world. I'm very pleased to be in here again, the third time in a row. And thank you very much for the very interesting day yesterday. And now it's time to start with session 3. It's very interesting about core technologies and standardization. And I'm very pleased to introduce Mr. Woo Shim from KRISO, a strong partner of Office, and with his presentation, Maritime Mobile Service based on high bandwidth technology. I kindly ask the presenter to stay in time, and we are looking forward to a very interesting presentation. Please go on.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Woo Shim, introduced by the chair. Today's topic is Maritime Mobile Services based on high bandwidth technology. Actually, I have presented about initial step of high bandwidth communication named as LTE Maritime. I have presented that related to the plan of deployment. And 2020, I also have shown the deployment status of LTE Maritime network and some verification result of the performance of that system. Now, at Digital at Sea 2021, I'm going to show and present about the strong and concrete need of high bandwidth communication in maritime field. This is content. I will follow that. First one is Maritime Mobile Service. I'm sorry to make you see that very complicated picture. This picture is Korean frequency allocations regulated by the Korean government. I'm asking you to find some check marks. I have added check mark for the frequency of maritime mobile services in current situation. You can see that the frequency band from 3 kilohertz to 3,000 gigahertz. Where are the check mark of maritime mobile services? Yes, right. There are only in lower part of the frequencies. So at this time, maritime mobile services only use the lower part of the frequency allocations only. ITU have defined maritime mobile services as like this. A mobile service between coastal station and ship stations, or between ship stations, or between associated onboard communication stations. All of these already include all activity of maritime field. But we only use the lower part of the frequency allocations only. Next one is high bandwidth. I think I need to explain some more in detail about the high bandwidth. Yes, this term, high bandwidth, was widely used in the memory industry, like you know, that DRAM or DDR-RAM, something like that. So if we have the high frequency, we can get wide bandwidth and very high speed communication. But high frequency cannot propagate long distance. But we have to find some appropriate point between the high frequency and the coverage. That is the technical issues to find high bandwidth communication in maritime mobile services. These pictures represent a strong need of high bandwidth technology in the communication in maritime. You know, you already know that the e-navigation, many e-navigation services are currently requiring many communication capability. How about in MAS, a maritime autonomous surface ship? If they want, if MAS ships want to navigate safely, they require many information and many sensor data from around. How to implement that communication environment? So I believe that the MAS ship strongly require the very high-speed network between ship-to-ship environment. How about in digitalization of ship? We have seen several presentations about digitalization. Okay, let's find some private trend and cases of strong requirement of high bandwidth technology. This is some figures. These are some figures from some white paper 2019. First one is 249%. That means the amount of increase of data generation per vessel compared to the level of 2019. 249% increasement of ship data will grow in maybe in 3 years to 2024. Next figure is 89%. This figure means the ship send some data in a day, but 89% of data should not be real time. So 89% could be a non-real time data. So only 11 points of data transmission require real time or almost real time. So 47% of data could be transmitted by daily, and the rest of them by less frequently transmitted. The next one is 60%. This means the probability a ship could locate within the coverage of mobile communication. The 60% of ship is navigating globally. They could be or must be in port or coastal waters. That is, many part of ships are navigating in the vicinity of the land. Please see these pictures. This picture was derived from the AIS Automatic Identification System data, global data. So look at the color density of colors. Many ships navigating in the vicinity of the land. How about this picture? I think you can get some insight more clearly. Here is an American. There's Europe. There's Korea and Japan and China. The very dense red reveals the traffic volume. How about the private companies' trend? I think you already know the Inmarsat, the very big satellite communication provider. They already have the product portfolio with the satellite and LTE fusion system. Another example of private company, the Castor. They claim the seamless communication between satellite and LTE. And the next one is about the LTE Maritime. I think you're wondering if you can use the LTE service in the maritime. I already have presented these pictures maybe in 1 year ago. But this is a proven case of LTE Maritime. This system can provide LTE service up to 100 kilometers from coastline. The left picture shows the RSRP, reference signal received power. The right one is represent for SINR, a signal to interference plus noise ratio. So whole picture shows the successful LTE quality up to 100 kilometers from coastline. So how do we make this successful result? Actually, we have to have 500 altitude stations in order to get the line of sight 100 kilometers. But whole Korean coastline do not have enough high altitude mountains. But we can make it with using some antenna modification and using some technical cell planning, in addition to some know-how of our of our company and research institute. So we can get 46 or 22 or 23 megabps in the ocean, even maybe in 100 kilometers or 50 kilometers from the coastline. Finally, I will show you about the further direction of our KRISO for high bandwidth maritime communication. We already have developed LTE Maritime as an example of maritime ship-to network. Somebody wonder about the terminology ship-to-network or ship-to-air, ship-to-X. Please think the terminology of V2X on land. So, in maritime situation, a ship have to communicate with the land, but also require the direct communication ship to ship, even ship to air, like a drone, even ship to people, or even ship to infrastructure, like H2 navigation. The frequency allocations or communication technology should be developed based on the close cooperation between the international organization related to them. Finally, I would like to conclude my presentation with my epilogue. Whenever I heard smart, this terminology, smart, many people think only almighty things. But I believe smart doesn't have to mean almighty, but appropriate. So this appropriate communication means to provide it seamlessly by appropriate system on required time at required waters. So that is the reason why we could develop or should develop the high bandwidth communication in maritime field. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Shim, for your very interesting insights and especially for the message to send out with your last slides. Thank you very much. And now I'm very pleased to introduce to you Mr. Philip Lane from the International Association for Marine Electronic Companies, also known as CIRM. Mr. Lane, Philip, the stage is yours. We are looking for your presentation. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Axel. Can I check that you're hearing me okay?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. Well, good evening to all our hosts in the Republic of Korea and good day to all distinguished delegates around the world from here in London, UK. Thanks, first of all, for this valuable opportunity to speak at the Digital at Sea Asia Pacific Conference. The aim of my presentation today is to introduce the CIRM Cyber Risk Code of Practice and the related adoption campaign. But first of all, just to put things in context, I'll just take a few minutes, if that's okay, to introduce CIRM for those that are less familiar with what we do. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, Comité International Radio Maritime is the leading international trade association for marine electronics companies. We bring our member companies together into a collective body with an influential voice at IMO and other bodies. And our members include equipment designers, manufacturers, service providers, system integrators, and software development companies. Next slide, please. Oh, I think we may... Oh, no, that's fine. Okay, good. Yeah, so just to give you some idea of our areas of interest, here's some of the types of equipment that our members manufacture, install and maintain. Next slide, please. And just a bit more context, these are the companies that are currently represented on our board of directors. So you'll see some big names there from the maritime radio and navigation fields. Thanks very much. Next slide. Okay, so CRM provides representation of the maritime electronics industry internationally. We work with our members to contribute to the development of regulations and standards, and we provide a forum for our members to exchange ideas and opportunities. We also provide specialist information services to members. If we don't know the answer ourselves, we usually know someone who does. Next slide, please. Amongst others, we work with IMO, IEC, ITU, ISO, IHO, IALA, of course, IACS, RTCM, etc. And we participate in industry meetings and trade shows around the world to do that. Okay, next slide, please. Let's move on now to the main subject, which is the CRM Cyber Risk Code of Practice. Next slide, please. So, in February 2020, CRM published the two documents that are shown here. The first one is the CRM Cyber Risk Code of Practice, and the second one was an associated guideline to help companies implement the Code of Practice. This was the result of 2 years' work from CRM's Cyber Risk Working Group. Next slide, please. The Code of Practice was introduced with two aims. It's to help our members to implement cyber risk security best practice in an effective and cost-efficient way, and secondly, to show the world that CRM promotes industry best practice on cyber risk management. Next slide, please. While we were doing the work internally, we established a key principle that we built the Code of Practice around, and this was a chain of trust. In the chain of trust, every participant is responsible for providing the elements needed to establish a complete chain of cyber security. And vendors are just one link in that chain. Others include regulatory bodies, ship owners, and operators. The Code of Practice is a way of demonstrating that the vendor's link in the chain is secure. Next slide, please. The Code of Practice itself consists of 6 guiding principles for vendors to establish their role in the chain of trust. So we're going to now just look at those 6 principles in a little bit more detail to give you some idea about what's actually in the Code of Practice. Okay, next slide, please. Yep, so next slide, we'll go through the 6 principles. Okay, thank you. The first principle is commitment to adherence and guidance. We've heard a lot at this conference so far on the importance of standards and providing a harmonised response to challenges faced by the shipping industry, and they're vital to the work of CRM members. Under this principle, adopters of the code will make best efforts to deliver and maintain products and services with a defined level of cybersecurity and cyber resilience. And that's by compliance with standards and recommendations provided by international regulatory and standard bodies such as IMO, ISO, IEC, RTCM, and IACS. There's now a good number of cybersecurity and cyber resilience standards out there that are directly related to our industry to draw on. For example, for secure networking, there's IEC 61162-460, and the first amendment of that was published last year. General requirements for navigation and communication equipment are set out in IEC 63154, which was published earlier this year. Work's also in progress at IEC on a new standard for secure communication between ship and shore. That's known as CIRM, and that's expected to be published next year. And also ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, is developing a maritime cybersecurity standard related to managing the cyber risk of operational systems. So there's quite a bit out there to draw on now. It's really starting to build up. Okay, next slide, please. This is the... Oh, are we on the same? Oh yeah, default, sorry, yeah. The second principle is default cyber secure. Under this principle, adopters of the code will make best efforts to ensure that their products are shipped in a state that's as secure as possible. The product and configuration can be set in either a secure or a non-secure mode. It will be set to the secure mode by default. Also, hidden or backdoor accounts will be minimized. Customers will receive advice on the impact of overriding and bypassing security measures. Okay, that's that. Next one. Next slide, please. Should be number 3, confidentiality. Thank you. Yeah, so the third principle is confidentiality. Vendors often have access to commercially sensitive information about their customers, and people and companies have a right to expect, and do expect now, that such personal and commercial data will be treated as confidential by vendors, so that's covered there. Okay, next slide, please. Principle number 4 is quality as the foundation of cyber risk management. Under this principle, adopters of the code will make best efforts to ensure that products and services are designed, developed and delivered using the principles of a quality management system such as ISO 9001. Next slide, please. The 5th principle relates to software updates and vulnerability handling. Under this principle, vendors will be transparent about product vulnerabilities and take appropriate actions to minimize risk and be absolutely clear about end-of-life dates for product support and other date-related issues for ongoing security maintenance. Next slide, please. This is the 6th and final principle, which is continuous development. Under this principle, vendors will demonstrate their commitment to ongoing cyber risk management by actively participating in the development of cybersecurity measures and industry standards, which they very much already do. The standards that we looked at earlier are very much developed by a strong involvement by CIRM members. And also there's the cyber risk working group, our internal CRM working group, which also I hope contributes a lot to that work. Next slide, please. Okay, the other document that I mentioned earlier is the related CRM Guideline Gl002. I mentioned it earlier, and it's a companion document to the CRM Code of Practice. The aim of this guideline is to explain how to implement the measures of the principles of the code by directing the audience to appropriate standards, guidelines, and best practice, and providing additional guidance where this can add value. This guideline is divided into sections containing specific guidance on each of the 6 principles of the Code of Practice that we've just discussed and provides more detailed guidance on them. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, let's move on to talk about the Code of Practice Adopter campaign. This was launched in December 2020, and the idea was to encourage our members to sign up to the CRM Code of Practice. So in adopting the CRM Cyber Risk Code of Practice, members self-declare that they're making best efforts to comply with the 6 principles that we've just looked at in the code. Adopters of the Code of Practice can use the official certification mark, which you can see on the screen there, in their marketing materials. Next slide, please. Okay, so the CRM, so when members sign up as adopters of the Code of Practice, they are then listed on this page here, which is on our website. It's the CRM Cyber Risk Code of Practice webpage. We currently have, there's 2 companies listed at the moment, and we know that other companies are considering it, but tends to be a process to go through to get to that point of adopting it. So while we're on the Cyber Risk Code of Practice webpage, it also provides an overview of the Code of Practice and guideline documents that we just looked at, and they can both be downloaded from that webpage if that's of interest, and I've put the link up there as well, so if people would like to look at that further. Next slide, please. So why would vendors adopt the CIRM Code of Practice? We think that adopters will provide a beacon of good practice and lead the way in providing our industry's link in the chain of trust that we talked about earlier. Members that sign up will be seen as trusted partners by their customers, such as ship owners and operators. Next slide, please. And as we're talking about ship owners and operators, we know that they look to the well-known and respected guidelines on cybersecurity on board ships. They look to them for guidance on cybersecurity and compliance with MSC 42898. Version 4 of the guidelines was published in December 2020, and the exciting news for us was this version of the guidelines actually includes a reference to the CRM Code of Practice and the guidelines. The reference is in section 1.8 on relationship with vendors and other external parties. Next slide, please. So just to look at that section, 1.8, in this, the CRM Code of Practice and Guidelines given as an example of a way for manufacturers and service providers to demonstrate their will and ability to implement effective and cost-efficient cyber risk best practice. So by adopting the Code of Practice, vendors can demonstrate their alignment with those industry guidelines. Next slide, please. So, to summarise, by adopting the CRM Code of Practice, vendors are declaring that they understand cyber risk threats and vulnerabilities, that they'll build risk reduction measures into their products, that they'll help ship owners, operators, crews and service personnel that buy and use their products to make good security decisions, and that they're compliant with industry guidelines. Next slide, please. So thanks again for this opportunity. Thanks for listening, and back to you, Axel.
Yeah, thank you very much, Philip. This was very interesting. Thank you for your insights. I think definitely an issue we should have an eye on and go on here further on. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you, I don't know if it's really necessary to introduce the famous Michael Lind with his very interesting topic from my perspective, maritime informatics. The new disciplines really be worth to join this planet. Michael, the stage is yours.
Thanks a lot. I'm sorry to say that we only have one planet. Otherwise, it would be fantastic if we could have multiple planets to work with. Good evening, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon. I don't know what I should say. And I'm extremely happy to be here. And I also want to express my happiness that this community is moving along. And many of you know me since before. I've been at a lot of the navigation efforts historically. So in my effort, as you have seen, and there's been a lot of news about it, is the emergence of maritime mathematics as a discipline responding to global concerns. Informatics is a very strong expression for taking a holistic stance on different things. And what we have done is basically to find ways for both practitioners and researchers to join forces in enhancing efficiency, sustainability, resilience, and safety of shipping. So next, please. We have managed to pinpoint or to get a good grounding of maritime mathematics, especially by numerous of articles coming out written about and together with the industry, and also launching 2 books, which is now picking up very much and also in the training and educational sector, which is very good because we need to cater for the new generation coming forward as well. So what is it all about? It is about balancing capital productivity on one side, and on the other side, caring about the energy efficiency. And the capital productivity is most often something that is of concern for the single organization, while energy efficiency needs to be something that is brought to us by common concern. It is an expression for trying to respond to organizational, global and humanitarian concerns. We had some work together with the World Economic Forum where we realized that about 8,000 or 10,000 people are dying every day due to starvation. And just think about it, if our shipping system doesn't work and there is a delayed ship and nobody's reporting about it in one port, if they would report about it in time, that would also mean that you could redirect other transports and maybe saving some lives. And now during the COVID, we have also seen that there has been challenges in bringing forward necessary humanitarian equipment, such as face masks and so on. Just before you change slide, I would just like to say that there are 3 focus areas. It is about digital collaboration, that concerns incentives and cybersecurity. Philip, fantastic for your talk. Thanks a lot. Digital data sharing and decision making, supporting standardization and situational awareness. And as you know, I've been dealing a lot with the port collaborative decision making historically to try to get the port to get a good situational awareness. And also data analytics, which I think that Mr. Woo Seng Shim showed very well, that there's a lot of things that can be done by the increasing amount, exponential amount of increasing amount of data coming forward. So next, what is the maritime ecosystem? It is unique, and I think that we need to address that. It is the oldest and largest sharing economy. It is global, it is flat, it is self-organized. It builds up on federated democratic governance. It is asset intensive and with high demands on optimized resource utilization. It is not allowing for one owner, and we need to cater for the episodic interactions. And I think, for example, the initiative of the Maritime Connectivity Platform and MCC is a very good mean that measure that the industry has taken for coming around that. So next, please. If you look into the scope of maritime mathematics, it's trying to cater for the port-to-port transports and looking into that context. And if you talk about digitalization, you can never detach that from the human practice, which means in principle that you need to understand the logic of what is happening. And what we are looking into is to digitally connecting people, goods, port, ships and infrastructure in order when we are innovating the maritime ecosystem, responding to the needs of the passengers, the cargo owners, the transport buyers, the shipping companies, and also the other modes of transports. Next, please. And what we did bring forward in the Maritime Mathematics was to look into a kind of an OSI model, if you are familiar with that, with the different layers, where we are looking upon data communication, data exchange, data stream mining, decision support, but also the more structural, regional and global aspects that needs to be catered for. And I think that most of the things that are addressed here during the conference is how can we actually take a global collaboration in order to cater for the data communication and data exchange that is to be used to enhance the capital productivity and energy efficiency. Next, please. Having said that, it is self-organizing. There is no single keystone organization. We do not have any Apple in shipping. It is distributed control, and it's a very loosely coupled organizations that are engaged, adapting autonomously and organically. Next, please. Having said that, what do we need? We need to connect what happens at sea with what happens at shore. There's no question about it. We need to enhance the predictability and movements and operations. Sometimes I feel like, is it really possible? Because everybody is really acting on their own behalf, but at least we should come to a situation where we have enhanced our supply chain visibility. I'm sorry to say, but I mean, if you look outside Oakland, which we revealed just recently, you saw that when this congestion arrived, there was a lot of steaming outside the port, and some ships waited even up to 21 days. And the distance was normally 400 nautical miles, but they steamed almost close to 2,000 nautical miles when going between Los Angeles and San Francisco. And in those cases, just-in-time shipping doesn't help. So we need to look on this from a holistic point of view, and now we have a new situation servicing with 40 ships, 40 large container ships waiting outside Los Angeles, and that is equivalent to the how much Port of Gothenburg is handling for 1 year, the amount of containers that is staying outside there. And now there are big reports coming that the land-based infrastructure cannot really handle this. So these disruptions along the supply chain needs to be also taken into considerations when we design our methods for how to move forward. So next slide, please. What we did then to surface some kind of framework here is to look upon maritime transport as a self-organized ecosystem, ping or next, and that is driving us towards a foundational viewpoint, looking into information sharing communities. We have local information sharing communities, such as port community systems, but we also do have more horizontal information sharing communities, such as trade lanes. We look into the appointment economy, which is where you try to move from coordination based on physical presence towards the more virtual coordination. And I think that I would really salute what BIMCO is trying to do with the virtual arrival clause, for example. Standardization is of course important, and that story we know all of us, but also the collaborative alignment. And I mean, in comparison with aviation, for example, ships are very long time at sea, and why we need to continually adapt and align towards each other given the different circumstances that arise. Next, please. And this would then drive us towards establishing sustainable and smart ports, smart ships, and intelligent cargo. Next, please. And would be then empowered by data fusion, machine learning, digital twins, etc. And that then, next please, provides decision basis for balancing the environmental sustainability and capital productivity. Next, please. So just a fast touch point on what we are talking about. First of all, I mean, if you look into processes of collaborative alignment, you see this famous metro map that we made for Port GDM. that also Michael Bergman talked about yesterday. And it is very much about not providing the decisions, but providing a foundation or a situational awareness for the involved actors to bring something for each of the actors to base their decisions on. So, and this is building up on the assumption that no one sits on the whole truth. And these are things that is, of course, being surfaced in just-in-time shipping. We could also talk about elastic time slot management or virtual queue tickets. And I think that as we see now, market forces are very strong in this industry. I mean, I have a hypothesis that a lot of the shipping capacity is now placed in the world is placed on where the biggest freight prices are, and that means that there are some places in the world that is not having enough shipping capacity at the moment. So those are big questions that needs to be also taken into considerations when we're looking into this. And maybe a marketplace for slot time trade would be a mean to actually take this leap towards a more virtual coordination. Next, please. This is what is coming forward in what we call the appointment economy, and we also need to realize that we do have a situation where from a port point of view, the port is visited by several fleets, and from the shipping company's point of view, they are visiting several ports. So there are actually two sides of the same coin when it comes to optimization processes of port calls. Next, please. I will be fast. We have the information sharing communities, which is on a very highly debate at the moment on how you actually can connect those information sharing communities in a good way, and especially now when we have more and more data coming in from sensors that complement our image. Next, please. When it comes to standardization, we do have a number of different efforts, and I salute also the work that Jeppe was presenting yesterday about the IMO reference data model as a way to align a number of different initiatives going forward. And I also am very happy for the support that IALA made for bringing the port call message format forward. But we should also be aware of, and we should acknowledge that there are a number of different private initiatives going on, such as what DCSA is doing in the shipping sector and IATA is doing in the aviation sector. That was also reflected in the second Maritime Mathematics book, if anybody is interested. Next, please. Going forward, just a few words. When you look into sustainable ports, we would look at the port as a transport hub, but also as an information hub and as an energy hub. And you maybe just saw that Maersk went out and said that they just bought 10, I think it was 10 metal-on ships, and that means that they are basically asking for, please settle now the infrastructure for us to get fuel, otherwise this will not work. So there's a push in the industry towards maybe the ports could access energy hubs. Next, please. We also see that the movement of smart ships with especially also another thing that my co-authors, if I say that they claim that ship recycling is a huge thing that actually could be compared with and maybe contribute even better to the decarbonization than just-in-time shipping. So digitalizing what components that you can reuse is something that is of highly importance. You have autonomous functions, of course, and much data generation and providing them decision support for onboard and onshore operations. Next, please. We also have movements in intelligent cargo. You have a number of companies that are now placing intelligent devices on containers. I think that is something that can be used in very many different use cases, including navigation, but we can also talk about fire prevention, for example. That is a strong problem in the sector. Next, please. So in principle, we are moving, and the maritime sector is transforming from fragmented situational awareness to common situational awareness, from low information quality to high and reliable information quality, from lacking and planning horizons to predictable operations, unstructured information exchange to standardized data exchange, from sub-optimized operations with the silos to more mature collaboration culture, hopefully from unnecessary waiting times to just-in-time operations, and from low IT maturity to enhanced IT systems and third-party operations. And just to give a note of, next please, note of carefulness here. Next please. My situation, and next please, looking into what is happening here. We have a lot of efforts being put into standardization, there's no question about it, but we cannot stop there. We need to move into phase 2 of the data-driven decision-making for collaboration and synchronization, where there are at least 3 aspects that are important: collaborative alignment, synchronized and coordinated operations, and empowered decision-making. Next, please. This would then pave the way for the reasons why shipping are existing with the multimodal integration. And next, please. Then providing the capital productivity that we are looking for: efficiency, resilience, safety, and sustainability. Next, please. And this needs to be forwarded backwards. So we need to really look into what the industry really are desiring. And I mean, you know that there's a lot of money now floating around in the shipping sector, and I'm not 100% sure that they are making the appropriate investments in relation to standardization, to be honest. So to conclude, next, please. We do have an emerging discipline called Maritime Mathematics. It's an applied science for the maritime industry. It engages both practitioners and researchers for a common goal. I think that we found a gap where actually a lot of people are becoming engaged, and it's a global concern, which is really nice. But we need also to then, of course, reflect the contextual differences at the different sides of the world. It promotes standardized digital data sharing throughout the cargo chain. It supports enhanced efficiency, safety, security, resilience, and sustainability in maritime transports. It enables understanding, predicting, advising, and improving maritime activity. It enables seamless integration to the larger transport system. We think, and the people that are working on this, that maritime mathematics is the key to the future of maritime transports. Next, please. To be a little bit academic, so to say, it is a science for change. It requires both the engaged scholarship, and that means that researchers are actually engaging together with the industry, but it also requires the reflective practitioner. And what we need to ensure is that we do not pave the cow paths. That means that, and this is most often the distinction between digitizing and digitalizing. Take, for example, e-bill of lading. That is creating a huge number of new possible opportunities where the customs in the other end, so to say, for example, could be preparing themselves for the incoming goods while the ship is at sea, for example. So, next, please. Having said all this, there is a strong backup for this, and I'm very, very happy to be here in this community to talk about this, and please join the forces with us now so that we really are pushing the maritime mathematics discipline or discourse forward. I mean, we have people from UNCTAD, we have people from famous professors from academia, we have shipping company CIOs, CIOs of ports, and also authorities with us on this. So think about it. Next, please. So again, visit maritimemathematics.org to follow all the things and writings that are coming up, and feel free to reach out if you also would like to expose something that is of interest for this community. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. I think you see there's definitely room for also an academic perspective on that, and it's quite necessary to bring this all forward. So thank you very much to all of the presenters. I think it was really worthy to listen to you. And now I would like to ask the conference center, are there any questions on the web for the presenters?
Okay, Axel?
Yeah.
Yes, here we have some questions. Yes, especially to Mr. Michael Lind. Michael Lind, congratulations, your second edition of new books on maritime informatics. I also purchased the books 1 month ago, and I'm now reading very interestingly. As you're talking about the maritime informatics, this is a very essential fact in digitalization to support enhanced efficiency, safety, resilience, and sustainability in maritime transport. And I think most important thing is to promote standardized digital data sharing. So I want to ask you, do you have any idea on how to promote standardized digital data sharing through the digital platforms such as the Maritime Connectivity Platform, MCP, or the other platforms that provide the other navigation services over the land, especially in European side and across these different platforms. So how to promote standardized digital data sharing among different platforms used by each region? That is my question.
Okay, thanks, Sanbei. And this is an advanced issue, of course, because what we want to do at the end of the day is to bring the whole world together somehow. And let me give at least 3 reflections on this. First of all, I think it is essential that we see that, how should I call it, international organizational taken initiatives is not going to cater for all needs of digital data sharing in the world, so to say. So that means that we also need to acknowledge what private communities, such as DCSA, Digital Container Shipping Association, etc., are trying to promote. So I think that is one piece of it. And I would be most happy to promote MCP to be something that is not only trying to do something that IMO reference data model is doing, but that is one component, but also other components. That's one part of it. The other part I think would be really valuable is if you can associate the business services or the information services that are promoted coming through MCP with some kind of use case description saying that, okay, these are the business value for you to exchange this data. This is what will come out. And the third thing is to follow the patterns of the ships moving around the world, but because we need also to acknowledge that there is a lot of ports in the world. I don't know, I hear different figures here, 60, 70%, 80% maybe of all the ports in the world do not have the right digital capabilities. There are some movements going on at the moment to introduce some kind of digital performance index as a way for catering for this. I'm very happy, Sanbei, also that Thomas was part of writing one of the, together with Yin Park, writing one of the chapters in the first Maritime Mathematics book, and there we also put forward MCP. And as a last thing to mention is also that maybe that is a thing directed towards both Gillian and Omar, is that please consider now bringing Maritime Mathematics into the training agenda, because those phenomena that are surfaced there is something that people are going to start to talk about.
Okay, thank you so much, Michael. I wish you participate in the next session to input your valuable idea in the clusters or the other cooperation in terms of the maritime informatics. And Axel, is it okay for me to select one of more audience here to have a question to speaker?
Yes,
okay.
Of course. Welcome.
Okay. Yes, there is some audience to have some question. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
I have a question for Philip Rain. I'm Seong-hyeok from the Korea Maritime Transportation Safety Authority. First, thank you for your presentation, Philip. As you mentioned, cybersecurity is becoming more and more important. Cyber attacks are being increasingly manipulated and new attacks are emerging. So what are international joint efforts needed to strengthen cybersecurity in marine digitalization? In particular, what international joint efforts should be made in terms of maritime digital service platform?
Thank you very much for the question. Are you hearing me okay?
Very loud and clear.
Good. Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, very good question. And I think I kind of touched on it in the presentation. I think the efforts, as we know, filtered down from the IMO and then are picked up by the international bodies that develop the international standards, etc. And we can start to see that work already happening. So we can see IEC, for example, developing standards for both secure networking, which I think will become vital, as you say, for the connectivity platforms and things. So secure networking, both adhering to the 61162-460, but also in a more general context. and also the SECOM, which I think will be absolutely vital elements of this international, establishing international means of communicating data between ships and shore. So I think seeing a continuation and promotion of those international standards efforts, particularly from the vendors' points of view, makes it absolutely clear what needs to be done and how we harmonise this work. And when we have a harmonised approach to it, as we know, we can build platforms such as the NCP on top of that. I hope that helps.
Yeah, okay. Axel, Mike, back to you, Axel, for your Q&A on the website, if any.
I don't see any questions. Actually, what I have one for the speakers, you know, we have a long discussion now for e-navigation for years, actually, and I think we're seeing only very few services, actually. What can we do to improve the situation and to solve this hen of egg problem of users and service providers? Do you have an idea what could be the next services that bring us forward? Maybe all of the presentators?
I can start. I think that a key thing is to really cater for the ones that the shipping industry is serving, equals cargo owners and transport buyers. I was just recently in an international discussions together with Nike and Stora Enso, which are really global players. And I asked them, and this was in association to the Suez blockage, and I asked them, do you know anything when things will be moved and coming forward in relation to your goods? And they basically say, we don't have any tools for supply chain visibility or any visibility tools. And that is a disaster, because that means that the trust of the whole shipping system is really rocking at the moment. And we just saw now in the Swedish news. I mean, it's a pretty big player. IKEA just said that they will run their own ships.
Yeah, thank you very much. So looking at the time, it's really time again to thank all the speakers and of course the audience. Thank you very much, and stay safe around the world, and let us hope for a very good rest of the conference, and goodbye from my side. Now this concludes the session 3, and we're going forward to session 4. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes session 3, and now swiftly moving on to session 4, which is titled The Harmonization on the Maritime Digital Transformation. And our session 4 will be chaired by Mr. Hong, who is right next to me, right?
Yeah, all right. Thank you. At my sessions, we have 4 speakers, including myself, with the topic harmonization on maritime digital transformations and necessary global cooperation to solve some kind of challenges in the maritime digitalization, if any. So let's start our session 4. Ms. Zhou, would you please introduce the first speaker of my session?
Sure. The first speaker will be Ms. Martina Fontanet-Soleil, who is participating online. She will be talking about the recent work of IMO on facilitation related to the digitalization of the ship-port interface. I believe that she is connected right now. Hello, and if you're ready, please take the floor.
Yes, good morning from London. Do you hear me well?
Yes, you are very clear and loud. So good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, good morning from London, and I'd like first to thank the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries for the invitation to participate in this me to present the work of the IMO on digitalization produced in the Facilitation Committee. I am Martina Fontanet, and I am a technical officer in the Facilitation section and in the Maritime Safety Division. Next, please. So I understand the audience is already familiar with the International Maritime Organization, so I'm not going to be long in the introduction, just to remind that the role of the IMO is to create a regulatory framework for the shipping industry, but that also IMO is about technical cooperation and supporting member states effectively implement regulations. Next, please. So IMO is a member states-driven organization. You can see in this slide that there are 174 member states in the IMO, and also NGOs and IGOs together with member states make a substantial contribution to the work of the IMO. Next, please. So in this slide, you see some examples of the 53 treaty instruments of the IMO. The main conventions are widely ratified, as you can see, the world tonnage represented. And it is also important to note that the implementation of IMO instrument is the responsibility of the member states. The FAL Convention, which you see underlined in red, is the one that is relevant for my presentation. Next, please. Okay. So in this slide, you can see how the IMO works. It is a technical organization, and the technical work is carried out by 5 main committees, technical committees, and supported by a number of subcommittees. The work I will introduce is produced in the context of the Facilitation Committee, which is responsible for matters related to the facilitation of international traffic. I'm sure you are familiar with the ports and clearance processes and the many stakeholders involved in them. The FAL Committee also addresses the harmonization and digitalization of the data exchanges related to ship clearance processes in ports and to the single window concept. Next, please. The FAL Convention is the main instrument that guides the work of the FAL Committee, the Facilitation Committee. The FAL Convention is an international treaty, and it includes a number of standards and recommended practices to facilitate international maritime traffic. Member states that are contracting parties to the FAL Convention have the obligation to comply with the provisions of the FAL Convention. I'll go in more detail in the next slide. So the annex of the FAL Convention contains these standards and recommended practices on formalities, information requirements, and procedures which should be applied to ships stay and on departure from the ports, but also related to their crews, passengers, and baggage and cargo carried on board. It has also provisions on preventive measures and treatment of stowaways while on board, and has also a section on public health measures in line with the international health regulations of the WHO. Next, please. So the FAL Convention, one of the important aspects of the FAL Convention is that it limits the information that can be requested by public authorities from ships when calling a port, and it defines standardized paper forms that identify the information that government authorities could request from ships on arrival and departure from a port, the well-known FAL forms. Also, since April 2019, contracting parties have to set for the electronic exchange of these information requirements in the ports, and also the single window concept is recommended so that data is resubmitted only once and distributed to the relevant authorities. So the FAL Convention now it's being reviewed, and to remove to align it with the electronic data exchange, to align it with digitalization. So on the ongoing review in the FAL Committee meeting of this June 2021, a number of amendments were agreed to remove the concept of paper forms and document from the convention provisions, and to talk about information requirements, a data set of declarations. So from FAL forms to a set of information requirements, and the single window also approach will become mandatory as from 2024. Once the amendments to the FAL Convention will be adopted in 2022. So next one, please. In the slides, you see the declarations that initially were paper forms and now will be compiled in a data set. So for this, all this data contained in this identified in these declarations, contracting governments are required to establish systems for the electronic exchange of information to enable the transmission. So next, this is the main point of my presentation, and I'm glad that the IMO reference data model has been already mentioned in the previous session. We are doing efforts to promote this part of the work of the IMO. So to support a harmonized electronic data exchange between carriers and port stakeholders, IMO has developed the IMO reference data model, also known as IMO Compendium on Facilitation and Electronic Business. It consists of an IMO dataset which provides a unique identification, a common definition and formats for all data elements identified. Initially, the IMO reference data model covered all the information identified in the file forms. Different data standards were used in shipping, and harmonization was needed. So in collaboration with the WCO, ISO, and UNIC, who had developed their own standards for the information related to the FAL Convention, we developed this compendium so that the standards of these three organizations would be harmonized. The IMO reference data model is not intended to become a standalone standard, but rather a tool for harmonization and linking to existing standards. You can see in the slide the milestones achieved through the years with the IMO reference data model at the different FAL meetings. Next, please. So, as I mentioned, the compendium provides a common definition of representation for all data elements related to ship reporting requirements linked to the FAL Convention. It was developed under a partnership agreement between the involved parties, WCO, UNIC, and ISO, which agreed to keep their respective standards aligned with the IMO reference data model. The data exchange syntax, so meant the electronic message, is provided by the standards. Next, please. You can see here at a glance of the IMO dataset and the structure of the IMO reference data model. Next, please. So the IMO compendium is available on the IMO website. A new version was approved by FAL 45 in June 2021. So the IMO compendium is available on HTML version. You can also have an Excel version format of the reference data model for ease of use. And it has grown in the last years beyond the FAL Convention scope and now includes various additional data sets related to, for instance, operational and real-time data to support the just-in-time arrival concept. Also, new data sets on ship certificates, ballast water reporting, ship reporting systems are now being modeled into the compendium. Next, please. The FAL committee established the IMO expert group on data harmonization, which is in charge of maintaining the IMO compendium when changes are needed, but also to expand the reference data model with data sets beyond the FAL Convention. As I mentioned, now there is, for instance, the Maritime Declaration of Health, a data set on the Maritime Declaration of Health, one on the stowaways details, and other data sets that I mentioned. The expert group on data harmonization is open to IMO member states, industry, through the NGOs that have consultative status on the IMO, and to organizations. The expert group on data harmonization prepares the change requests to the reference model, and this needs to be approved by the FAL committee. And as I mentioned, the FAL Facilitation Committee agreed to extend the IMO reference data model beyond the convention and is now growing in other areas of shipboard data exchanges. The expert group also prepares the data sets to be integrated into the reference data model, and then these data sets have to be approved by the Facilitation Committee. Next, please. The Facilitation Committee also provides advice and assistance to other IMO bodies in preparing the electronic reporting and information exchange requirements for their mandatory instruments. For instance, we have discussed meeting data set on ballast water reporting. Also, as mentioned earlier, the IMO reference data model also includes two data sets to support with operational, related to operational and real-time data, timestamps to support the just-in-time arrival concept. Yeah, so next. Another big part of the work is the implementation of the single window concept in the clearance processing ports, since this is very complex and also multi-stakeholder. So as mentioned, the FAL Convention until now recommended the implementation of the single window concept, and as from before, if the amendments are approved at next year in the FAL Committee, the maritime single window will be mandatory as from 2024. So the single window is understood as an environment that allows for the submission or provision of standardized and harmonized information and declarations to a single entry point. So if we go to the next slide, here is a diagram to understand the information flows, the submission of information from ship reporting parties, ship master or agent, or that is submitted to the maritime single window and distributed to the different authorities that have access to it, and then the submission of the decisions back to the ship, to the ships, and the receipt of decisions from coming from the authorities. Next, please. So this is just a framework to understand the various single windows that coexist and how they may overlap in, or they coexist with different scopes, national, local, the nautical part, on the trade part, and covering different relationships. Next, please. So IMO has also produced guidance for setting up a maritime, for member states to support them in setting up a maritime single window. A new version of the guidelines was approved by FAL 45 in June 2021 and can be found in the IMO website in circular FAL 5 /circular 42/revised version 1. Provides definitions and roles among the parties, user groups, and also very interestingly provides some case studies and best practices for the member states to use. Next, please. IMO is also about technical cooperation. We have now made 3 different projects to assist implementing maritime single window. A project funded by Norway and with technical expertise provided by Norway based on their single window. A maritime single window was implemented in Antigua and Barbuda. The source code from this implementation is open source and is now available to other IMO member states. So there is an opportunity of this project in other small similar countries as Antigua and Barbuda. And currently, we are looking to develop a funding scheme for replicating this project in other similar countries. There is also a project going on in partnership with Singapore, this is to develop a maritime single window that targets busier ports, like medium-sized ports, and that aims to provide also port-to-port connectivity features. And finally, we're also supporting Nigeria in the development of their own maritime single window and port connectivity systems. So next one, and thank you very much. And please visit our website and check for more information.
Okay, thank you, Martina, for your presentation. Thank you so much, IMO's work, especially regarding to the single window and IMO data list up under the FAR committee. And this would be very useful to make more use cases as a best practice showing benefits and some effectiveness of digitalization to the stakeholders, as Mike Lynch said in his presentation. Okay, you may stay, keep your online participant for Q&A session after 3 more presentations. Okay, next present, would you introduce the next speaker?
Sure.
Yeah.
And our next presenter is Mr. Manuel Lopez Martinez from EU SPA, and he will be discussing the EU space data contribution to safer navigation. So, Mr. Manuel, are you there?
Good morning. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are so clear and loud. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you the organization for this invitation and to give us the possibility to present the EU space data contribution to safer navigation. EUSPA is the European Union Agency for the Space Program, and it is in charge of the provision of services of Galileo, the European GNSS, EGNOS, the European SPAS, and it's also contributing to the market uptake of Copernicus services, the European Union Earth Observation System. Next slide, please. So Galileo is already offering a wide range of services. So I will start by describing very briefly some of them. So the open service is Galileo Open free of charge service setup, positioning and time services. And it is planned to deliver navigation message authentication, what we call SNMA, by 2022 approximately. So I will get back to that later in the presentation. We are also delivering the search and rescue services. This is the Europe's contribution to COSPAS-SAT, an international satellite-based search and rescue distress alert detection system. And we are contributing with 2 services already, what we call the forward link and what we call the return link that was operational in 2020. The next 2 services that I'm going to briefly describe are under development. So we have the high accuracy service. It's a service complementing the open service by providing an additional navigation signal and an added value service in a different frequency band. So the signal can be encrypted in order to control the access to the Galileo HAT services, and we plan to have this service available in 2022. I will get back to that point as well later on in my presentation. And the last service that I would like to mention coming from Galileo is the emergency warning service. This is a service for civil protection authorities. Is to relay emergency warnings to the population in a defined area, for example, to alert about an imminent flood or tsunami. And this service is expected to be available by 2023. I would like also to mention that Galileo was recognized by IMO in 2016 as part of the Worldwide Navigation System, which means that it's allowed for its use in merchant shipping. Next slide, please. So just to give you some insight about Galileo performance with respect to our open service, it is providing an accuracy in standalone mode below 2 meters. Next slide, please. So with respect to SPAS, the satellite-based augmentation systems, they are augmenting today GPS by providing pseudo-range corrections, satellite assistant alerts, and also provides a better accuracy with respect to GNSS standalone. And EGNOS is the European SPAS. Next slide, please. SPAS is being adopted worldwide, so it can be used in different ways. We can use the SPAS directly from signal in space, but also we can benefit from SPAS when it is retransmitted from a medium frequency radio beacon or from an AIS station. So in this case, the vessel can benefit from SPAS signal in space, especially where there is no GNSS infrastructure or it is an environment fully covered. Also, the vessels can use SPAS corrections when they are retransmitted by these radio beacons or the AIS stations. Next slide, please. With respect to standardization work, so in the force to have a common implementation in shipboard receivers, we are working with the International Technical Commission to finalize a test standard for SPAS shipboard receivers. We have drafted already the documentation, and the next meeting in IC, TC80, is planned in October the 12th. Next slide, please. So to give you also some insight about SPAS performances, I would like to mention the accuracy provided by EGNOS. And we have already reported that the accuracy in average is around 1 meter when we are talking about 95% of probability. Please, next slide. I would like to present more in detail two of the services coming from Galileo. One of them is the navigation message authentication, which will be delivered inside the open service, and also the Galileo high accuracy. Next slide, please. So with respect to Galileo navigation method authentication, or OSNMA, is a new feature that is under development of the open service, and will authenticate the Galileo data using the navigation message. So it will allow to help detecting spoofing attacks, and will be also provided for free to Galileo users. So these mechanisms provides users with an additional security layer, so that to be reassured about the authenticity of the information received from the Galileo satellites. And the initial provision of this service is expected by 2022. We are still in testing mode. Next slide, please. So with respect to the development of receivers, so we have launched a grant so that the industry can start developing and testing dual frequency receiver with Galileo and compliant with the resolutions from IMO and IC. And our objective is to have in the market this receiver, and for that the receiver will be with the type approved certificate following the standard 61108 part 3 from IC. And we'll also implement the algorithms to use OSNMA to support the receiving PNT in maritime navigation. Next slide, please. One of these projects that are implementing this feature is called ASCAR, and the primary companies that are investing in this product are SAP and GMV. Next slide, please. Similarly, I would like to talk about the Galileo high accuracy service. This new service will provide free of charge high accuracy precise point positioning corrections through the Galileo signal E6B, and also by terrestrial means. Basically, we provide it by internet as well. So we'll offer real-time improved user positioning performances with an accuracy less than 20 centimeters. And in this sense, Galileo will be the first constellation able to provide such high accuracy service globally. Next slide, please. So basically, some of the features of this service are the provision of accurate satellite data and atmospheric data to enable these PPP corrections. Those will be transmitted through an open format in the Galileo E6B, and also via internet. The format is based on RTCM and compact state space representation messages, and adapted to the Galileo E6B channel. The high accuracy service will be applicable for several constellations, at least Galileo and also GPS, and it will enable positioning accuracies down to 20 centimeters in horizontal and 40 centimeters in vertical. Next slide, please. With respect to the timeline of the implementation, so the Galileo high accuracy service is today in testing mode, and we plan to have the service declared operational by 2022. Next slide, please. So Galileo high accuracy service will be useful to support several maritime and inland waterways applications, like, for example, merchant navigation in ports, pilotage operation in ports, in inland waterways, port operations, for bathymetry, riverbed surveys, coastal seabed surveys, offshore dynamic positioning operations, for terminal cranes and extraordinary navigation, and also autonomous subspace vessel navigation. Next slide, please. I would like also to talk very briefly about Copernicus, and so specifically about the Marine Copernicus service now, which provides useful information for safe navigation. So Copernicus provides data, access to models, and also predictions related to wind, currents, waves, sea level, and sea ice thickness, for example. This information is available for its integration in new applications, as for example, the one created by the Norwegian Coastal Authority, the Barents Watch, that provides, together with the position of vessels that are coming from the AIS, also these parameters of wind currents and so on, including sea ice thickness, which is really relevant for safe navigation in that area. Next slide, please. So in summary, so EGNSS and Copernicus enable cleaner, safer, and more secure navigation by contributing to an enhanced performance in challenging environments, thanks to more satellites in view, increasing availability, also increasing accuracy thanks to dual frequency and high accuracy service, also contributing to increased safety and security thanks to the integrity coming from EGNOS and Galileo authentication, and also with respect to information coming from different emergency warning systems. So we have increased safety thanks to the Copernicus early warning services and the upcoming Galileo emergency warning service that can be used for tsunamis, big storms, and floods. all of them together can contribute to different applications. Can be used for autonomous vessels, but also it will contribute to the automation digitalization of the ports of the future. Next slide, please. So we can say that EU space data is an enabler for port digitalization as well. So I would like to mention some potential applications. So with respect to pilotage operations, this information is important for safe entrance to ports. And this information can be useful at the end to increase the accuracy that will be provided by Galileo high accuracy with, for example, the portable pilot units. Other applications, the port terminal automation, so stranded carrier automation and port terminal container management can benefit as well from Galileo high accuracy. And with respect to new vessel traffic services, they can benefit from Galileo authentication as well to contribute to the characterization of the digital ship twins that allows secure trajectory planning in port entrance. As well, Copernicus data related to wind, currents, and waves can be incorporated in the different services so that in the definition of the trajectories can take this information into account. Next slide, please. Okay, so I would like to finalize my presentation simply by providing some insights of one of our Horizon 2020 projects that we use prize funding. It's called Prepare Ships, and okay, it's managed by RISE as a prime. So Prepare Ship is developing a robust and precise navigation solution based on the fusion of information coming from Galileo, the open service, also HAS, EGNOS, and Copernicus, in combination with other sensors in the vessel. The objectives of this project are basically to reduce the risk of collisions and groundings, also to provide support to define the best trajectory for navigations in areas with high traffic, to reduce the emissions and the impact in the environment, and also to provide basic elements for precise position determination and the communication of data to support safer navigation. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. So I'm available to any question you may have, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Manuel Lopez Martins, for your presentation, especially highlighting the importance of space data in maritime digitalization with higher position accuracy, as well as the authentication to confirm the data. Next, we have one more speaker, Ms. Gillian Carson-Jackson from Nautical Institute. Gillian, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, nice to meet you. I follow up all of your variety activities on the LinkedIn every day. Today's topic is on the challenges to global maritime digitalization, right?
Yes, very much. And we do have a lot of challenges, don't we?
Okay, you can go ahead right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a wonderful opportunity to be here to present at Digital at Sea. And it's really wonderful to see you all, even in these ongoing challenges of this global pandemic. We are facing different challenges every single day. Here in Canberra, in Australia, I'm still in full lockdown as society is trying to reach these specified vaccination levels. On the global front, we are continuing to experience and to address so many different challenges. Next, please. As you know, I am the current president of the Nautical Institute. And what does that really mean? Well, it means that I've got lots of challenges that I am facing as I try to provide leadership for this international organization from what seems to be a perpetual lockdown environment. For those of you who may not know much about the Nautical Institute, I've presented just a few little thoughts there on the screen. Really, we are a global representative body for maritime professionals with a number of maritime publications and that consultative status at the IMO. The NI is actually just about to reach its 50th anniversary, and this is a milestone I do remember as well, celebrating with IALA a few years ago. So my journey here and the challenges faced with the Nautical Institute have been exciting, challenging, and I know that the journey will proceed into the future. Next, please. So today I'd like to actually focus on a bit of a journey. This journey will have 4 waypoints. We're going to start talking about this concept of the human capital. And we did mention, we heard that referenced yesterday. Then I want to think about progress and not perfection. So we had a wonderful lead into that with smart, not everything, but with having something that's smart. And then going into transformation and innovation, which we've heard a lot about. And finally, ending up with looking ahead. But I will warn you, as per usual, you will need to participate during the presentation. I will let you know when. It won't be too difficult, but we will be using some asset of participation. Next, please. So let's talk about the human capital. What is this concept of the human capital? We heard of this reference yesterday. The World Bank notes that the human capital consists of the knowledge, the skills, and the health that people invest in and that we accumulate throughout our lives. So this enables us to realize our potential as productive members of society. The underlying concept of the Human Capital Project is looking to invest in people through a number of various areas. The Human Capital Project is actually focusing as human capital to drive growth. We know that COVID-19 has seen some significant impact on many aspects of health, of education, of jobs, and of equality. So by prioritizing human capital, it will be critical to the future of productivity and growth. This also results in that green and resilient, inclusive recovery from COVID-19. The recent developments in innovation and technology we have seen and we've heard from the speakers over the past 2 days, they help to strengthen and support that human capital. So in essence, investing in human capital results in a stronger, more inclusive future. So really humans are the key. Next, please. This brings me to this concept of people and training and retraining. We heard about the value of people and the human capital in the opening remarks. Mick Kinley noted the need to look at what and how we are training our seafarers. Indeed, all maritime professionals. The new Seafarer Workforce Report from BIMCO and the International Chamber of Shipping estimates that there's 1.89 million seafarers that currently are serving in the world. And they do predict that there will be a shortfall. There's a need for 89,510 officers by 2026 to operate the world merchant fleet. Next, please. So how do we prepare for the future? The societal shift in work requires completely new skill sets and a new mindset for work, focusing on leadership and teams. According to the World Economic Forum, as early as 2025, so that's not very far from now, as early as 2025, technology will gain so much traction that machines and humans will spend equal amounts of time solving tasks. The consequence of this development will mean that over 85 million jobs will change in just 5 years, and there will be hundreds of new roles, jobs that we can't even imagine yet. So how can we be training in this environment of technology and innovation in a manner that we have used for decades? So it's leading to this need to navigate in an uncertain and rapidly changing ecosystem, the maritime ecosystem. A key challenge to global digitalization in the maritime environment is this link to the human aspect. Those who use the technology the recruitment, the training, the retraining, and the retaining, keeping people in the workforce. This leads me to the OECD Learning Compass. It helps us to focus on the technology-specific training, focus on the needs of skills and knowledge, attitudes, and values which have been added into the compass. So we're focusing on those concepts rather than actually technology or equipment-specific training. We heard from Professor Lind on maritime informatics, and the body of knowledge that's in maritime informatics could help provide a focus for future training of maritime professionals. Focusing on skill sets to understand what tools should do, rather than focusing on how to use a specific tool. So looking to the future, maritime informatics may provide a basis for future skill sets for maritime professionals. Next, please. So this brings me to some concepts of processes, procedures, and data. We've got lots of data. When we're thinking about data, who has it? Who wants it? Who owns it? How do we have that data layer? How do we keep it separate from the transport layer? We've heard a lot about the different harmonization of technology, harmonization of access points, the IMO, the data formats. So we're moving that way. We need to have that transparency and collaboration that was presented from Phil with regards to the work that CRM is doing. Seeing the maritime ecosystem as part of a larger ecosystem and moving beyond legacy systems, learning from other industries what has worked and what hasn't, focusing at that macro level, and really making sure that those standards are available to all. Next, please. Because in order to truly have a harmonized approach, we need to make sure that we all have the same standards. If we think about, if you go to play a game, you need to know the rules. Everyone needs to know the same rules. You need to have the same rule book. A truly harmonized approach to global maritime digitalization means that we all need to know that rule book and play by the rule book. But yet, some of these standards can be prohibitively expensive to buy or difficult to access. So we need to make sure that we have all the same rules. Next, please. This brings me to what we need to think of in terms of progress, but not perfection. To start small and see what works and focus on the cycle, focus on improving, not making it perfect before we use it, but making it work so that we can improve on it. Don't wait to be told what to do. Seek out the innovation and grow. Next, please. In remembering that perfect is the enemy of good. To borrow from one of the previous speakers, smart, not almighty. To be effective and appropriate and agile. Next, please. So we have some great technology out there, and I bet you're all using some right now. You might even have more than one in hand. I've got my handy mobile phone here too. I'm going to go to that later. So we have different technology available to us. But what are the requirements that we need with our technology? Next, please. If we think about the technology, what is it that we are doing? What do we want to do? How could we do it better, and how will we know it is better? Next, please. So I think we all know the Henry Ford quote about making stronger, faster horses. We have this quote as well from Stephen Jobs. So the thought is, we don't necessarily always know what it is that we want. Next, please. I'm going to explore this concept of this cycle a little bit further. So if you think back to the 1960s, do you think Martin Cooper could have imagined that his initial invention for this mobile phone would go to where it has gone? So we liked what we knew at the time. It was pretty cool. Next, please. But then something changed. And we didn't really even know what we wanted, but there was something happening out there. Next, please. We found that there were options that were available and information was being provided to us. Next, please. And so then we think we know what we like. So we started off with this mobile phone. Something changed. We didn't really know what we wanted. Some options came out. And we think we know what we like. Next, please. Changes were implemented. Next, please. And look what we got. We like what we get. And we start using it. And we're using what's new that becomes then what we like. And we go through this cycle again. So I couldn't have told you back in the 1980s or 90s when I first saw a mobile phone that I was going to want something like a smartphone. But I like it. And now things are changing. The cycle goes on again and again. And it actually, the speed of acceleration is actually accelerating. Next, please. We have heard about digitization, digitalization, and digital transformation. And we are now hearing what's next in this move along our digitalization movement, this concept of dynamic enterprise, moving from a system level restructure to an approach that is responsive to changes in technology and expectations. Next, please. This acceleration of the rate of change can be seen in the move that we've seen from Industry 1.0 through now to Industry 4.0, where we find ourselves today. Next, please. We need to embrace this innovation. If you look at the decades of developments from the 1980s and this concept of innovation, how we approached innovation, going from process-based to collaborative, to socially collaborative, and now to socially valued, service-oriented, and one of my absolute favorites, dream-based innovation. We are embracing innovation to survive the present and to prepare for the future. So this, my friends, is where we get our smart tools out and we go and we visit a Mentimeter. So next, please, and then leave that slide up just for a moment or two. I'm sorry, yes, you're one behind me. Next, please. So next, please. Thank you. So if you are on a mobile phone or if you want to open up an extra URL on your computer or your tablet, go please now to www.mentimeter, or you could use the QR code on the screen, which is what I'm going to try and do right now with the QR code. I'm just going to go and do that. Excellent. It should take you to menti.com. So you go to menti.com on a URL and enter the code, or you simply use the QR code. And I'm going to ask the organizers to do their magic now and to switch over to the actual Mentimeter screen, please. So when you do get there, and I know that in the background, they're going to be moving me over to the Mentimeter screen. When you do get there, I would like you to rank the 6 statements there in order of priority. So yes, please make sure you put that on present view on the Mentimeter. Wonderful. So I would like you to go down, the first one being what you think is the most important, down to the 6th, which you think is the lowest. And then watch the screen as it builds where our priorities are. So let me go and put my own on. Let me see, I think that's it. Give me 1 second, I'm going to do my own. And I'm going to do that one. There we go, and I'm going to do that one. And I'm going to do that one. Submit. Okay, so we're seeing that growth. It's actually very, very small on my screen there. Can anyone who's there in the room, can they tell me what the top 2 are? Oh, they keep moving still too. Look at that. That's amazing. So is keeping up with the speed of change, is that one fairly high? What's it? Oh, the lack of common standards. It looks like that one's quite up high there. the high cost to access those standards, and the lack of global access to digital communications is pretty high. Excellent. So I'll leave that open just for a few more moments while I talk a little bit about where do we feel our challenges are, because often our perception becomes our reality. There's this concept of confirmation bias. If we think something's not going to work, then we're probably going to make it in that process that it won't work. So one of the areas that we need to think about is where is this digital challenge coming from? Where are the global challenges that are coming to us? And what can we do to resolve those? As we've heard, the actual technology probably isn't going to be the challenge because it's developing so fast. We can't even imagine what there will be there. But we do have this opportunity to think about some of the key areas. And if you go back to my presentation, I'm just going to my last slide now, please. So what I think coming out of this presentation are 5 steps to digital transformation for the maritime environment. 5 ways that we can help to overcome the many challenges available to us. Next, please. First and foremost, I think we need to support the human capital. It is so critical to do that. Then, next slide, please. Focus on progress and not perfection. Somehow make sure, next please, somehow make sure we can all play by the same rules, that we can access the standards. The standards are being developed. There's a lot available out there. They need to be truly global and harmonized, but also we need to be able to access them. We have to be able to play by the same rules. Next, please. And don't ask what the users want. Look at what they do and how could they do it better? What's available to make it work better? Next, please. Recognize and support changes in innovation and realize that this is the way to the future. We are in this concept of digital transformation, moving beyond that now, almost to that dynamic and that more liquid environment. So next, please. We do need to remember that the greatest danger in times of turbulence, and yes, we are very much in times of turbulence, the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not that turbulence itself. It's to act with yesterday's logic. So we need to start thinking. We need to be that concept of being smarter. But also remember that being smart is not being almighty. It's not having all the answers. It's having the process in place so that we can evolve and adapt as things change. So thank you very much for your time. It's been my pleasure to present to you, and I look forward very much to the final presentations and the close of the session.
Okay, thank you, Julian. Thank you. You are very right. I believe the human capital is always first in the digital transformation, and also we need to focus on the progress, not perfection. So that is why we need to create some kind of international cooperation, such as clusters across the regions. Ms. Jo, we have one more speaker, right?
Yes, and I believe that the speaker is sitting right next to me. It's Mr. Hong, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Next speaker is by myself. I tried to make my presentation as soon as possible to make the time in punctually. Okay, would you show my presentation? Okay. Yeah, I will today present on digital sea clusters as global-based collaborative testbed across the regions in order to jointly facilitate global harmonization and the implementation of maritime digitalization. The clusters is one of the main pillars for the Digital Sea initiative under the umbrella of IALA. I will first review global status and future forecast on maritime digitalization and share the concept and roadmap for the cluster. So let's review the global status of maritime digitalization. I believe most of all of you are well aware of these pictures I used for a long time. The maritime community is now in the era of post-navigation and rapidly moving towards fourth industrial revolution. We can discuss together during the last several sessions, including the MaaS and also port automation or digital platform connecting all stakeholders across the maritime sectors. I believe the COVID-19 pandemic during the last year until now also give us some kind of lessons for maritime digitalization also. So personally, I anticipate that Korea maritime sectors might be fully transformed into digitalization before 2035 or at least 2040, or I believe like so. But actually, this is the same situation and same trend all over the world nowadays, I believe. This is one of the e-navigation instances providing ships route exchanging service for around 300 ships by STM and Navrlink at the European side based on the ACTIS system on board the ship through the shore-based service center. So you can see what is the route exchange service like this. And this is another instances of e-navigation, Korean Smart Navigation Service. We launched this service last January this year based on the domestic law. The left side shows the kinds of smart navigation services and some kind of architecture of the smart navigation. The service provided up to 100 kilometers from coastline through LTE communication network along all of the coast around the Korean peninsula. And the right side shows the vessel using smart navigation service, e-navigation service. I mean, more than 30,000 ships are to use the services through S100 electronic chart system on board the ships, and around 97,000 small ships, extremely small ships of less than 3 tons, are to use the services through application on the mobile phone. Actually, right. Some of you remember the left picture that I introduced at the conference in 2017 as the concept of smart navigation. And 4 years later, after that, we finally come through the concept to reality. As you can see on the right side, this is the aviation clips I captured from my mobile phone using e-navigation service around the Korean coastline these days. And because of this customized service based on each ship's route and position, respectively, they don't need to do plot collision or ground risk by themselves anymore. The shore center provides all of these alarm service to each vessel. Also, they don't need to check Navtex safety information by themselves anymore. Also, they don't need to do updating electronic navigation chart by themselves anymore. The Smart Navigation Center provides most update electronic navigation chart for 24 hours a day. This slide shows the current situation of maritime safety and efficiency under the analog-based technology in maritime sector. There have been some limitation to achieve both goals of safety and efficiency at the same time. And however, like on the slide, this balance in the digitalized maritime sectors, we can get both goals of safety and efficiency at the same time in a harmonized and also sustainable way, like this kind of balance, as you can see on the slide. And also, we commonly expect safer and cleaner oceans, as well as more efficient shipping through digitalization. In fact, the IMO anticipates that 65% reduction of maritime accidents. Also, some European parts said we can save port operation cost of $12 billion annually. Also, saving bunker consumption of more than $10 billion annual globally through the maritime digitalizations. The challenges, yes, of course, there should be some challenges, as the Jillian just talking about in his presentation. So that is why we are here today. So there are many kinds of navigation instances of the world, but first challenge is how to get global harmonization among digital services instances developed by each regions respectively, as you can see on this slide. That is why we need to establish a cluster across the regions for verifying, also validating the harmonization and interoperability among the instances. Second challenge is how to facilitate stakeholders participating in maritime digitalization together. As the lessons learned from the former MOU activities on testbed, it's very clear that goal-based cooperation and best practices showing the actual effectiveness to users as the use cases are most necessary to facilitate stakeholders participating in maritime digitalization initiative together. The cluster will give us the practical opportunity to achieve the harmonization and also the interoperability of maritime digitalization across the regions. Then let me now explain about clusters and its roadmap in a little bit more detail. These keywords were identified by Ms. Gillian Carson-Jackson again during the last hour conference. I like it very much. If we change the question like this, what does clusters mean to you? Then the answers might be just the same, of course, like this. The cluster is to achieve these keywords: harmonization and together, collaboration and sharing. Yes, I believe so and fully agree with these keywords. In addition, the most important thing to make clusters successful is the goal-based collaboration with clear needs among participants and best practices for users' benefits. And the cluster is one of the components of the digital SG initiatives under the umbrella of IALA, which is established during the last conference in 2020. As some of you are aware that the Digital Sea Initiatives has three kinds of main pillars, as you can see on this slide, including the first one is the Digital Sea clusters across the regions. And second part is, second layer, the series of Digital Sea conferences in Europe, North America, and Asia Pacific. And also third layers, you can see the third pillar, the capacity building workshop among advanced as well as the developing countries together to get some kind of common growth through the digitalization in the region together. So this is the basic concept of the clusters. The cluster will be started by global digital route testbed like this on board a real container ships operating between Korea and Europe. The component of a cluster include shore-based digital service center or platform like the Smart Navigation Service Center in Korea or some Navolink STM service center in European side. And also digital communication networks we need this to carry out this kind of test bed, including satellite or some new digital technology like the VDES. And also internationally agreed standard S100 active system on board as a shipborne platforms to use and provide the navigation services together. So the container ship is to be provided with the digital services seamlessly on an entire route from departure until entering into port, such as route service, maritime safety information services, and electronic navigation chart updating services, and port information services. The participants can verify and validate the harmonization and interoperability of their digital technologies and services across the region through these clusters, I believe. So the cluster will provide globally harmonized open testbed in one world network for all stakeholders in the region, so as to facilitate global-based international cooperation and maritime digitalization. Now the feasibility study on this cluster is now underway by KRISO Institute Korea for developing some Korean side architecture, and also Bergman Marine BM for European side. So both institutes is now carrying out the feasibility study on the cluster. The final report on the clusters will be made by consolidating these two studies together, made by both sides of Bergman Marine and KRISO side. And also, I believe peer review on the study before finalizing the report will be done by steering committee. So I very welcome all of you to join the steering committee to review this report by a peer review to further develop the report. So this is the roadmap to start operating clusters. That is feasibility study, as I told you just now, until next year. And MOU will be there, and while organizing participants in the cluster around the next years, and starting clusters step by step from 2023. This is just same situation, same theory that just Ms. Jillian said. We need to focus on the progress, not perfection. So we need to start clusters step by step. So that is my conclusion. And as you can see on my slide, we reviewed the global trend of maritime digitalization, and we shared the clusters to achieve the global harmonization of maritime digitalization under the umbrella of IALA. Thank you so much, and I'm going to conclude my presentation asking all of you here to join the clusters, because one step made by all together is more stronger than 10 steps made by one country. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Mr. Hong, for the great presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Now we are going to move on the Q&A session. So I'm going to receive some questions from the here studio. So is there some questions to speakers among the audience here? Okay, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you for your inspiring presentation. I'm Chu Hyun-jang of the MTC Secretariat. I want to ask one question to Mr. Sun Bae-hong. It is expected that maritime digital clusters will greatly contribute to the verification and the wider use of maritime digital technologies. However, to establish such a global cluster testbed, I believe there will be many challenges that requires greater cooperation and more engagement of countries around the world. So I want to ask you, what kind of efforts or commitment are you making in this regard?
Thank you. I wish some audience here make a question to speakers outside, overboard. Of course, anyway, it's a very good question, but as I told in my presentation, we are now carrying out a feasibility study made by both sides, European side by Bergman Marine, and also the Asian side by KRISO. So during the feasibility study, I believe we need some more challenges we have to solve to carry out the cluster across the region, European side and European side together. So after feasibility study, we can solve such kind of challenges to organize a cluster together. Of course, from this year, we can proceed such kind of activity to solve some challenges in organizing the participants. And also, as I told you, the MOU is very important to fully support these clusters to make a fruitful and practical result from the testbed, joint testbed together across the region, to make some kind of harmonization or good practices showing all stakeholders their benefits through the maritime digitalization. That would be very most important factor, I think, to facilitate the maritime digitalization globally and also across the region. Thank you. Okay, and is there some question from the participant online, overseas, or from the Korean side? No questions? Okay, so I believe there is no more questions from the participants because no sign. Yes.
So are there no more questions from the participants or online, and of course on site with our audience? I think that without any questions, I think that a lot of the presenters were quite thorough and comprehensive. That's why there are no questions. Maybe we can wrap up this session.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, all speakers and participants, for my sessions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hong, for your moderation during our session. And now it's the last session. And our last session will be chaired by Mr. Omar Fritz Eriksson of IALA. And he will be discussing the theme of digital at sea conferences. So I believe that there are two presenters in this session. Mr. Omar Fritz Eriksson, are you online? Yes, thank you very much for being the chair. Please take it away.
Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I am delighted to be a part of this excellent conference. As some of you will know, this series of conferences is very close to my heart. In this last session, we will first hear about the other two conferences in this series, and then we will proceed with the conference highlights. So now I would like to call upon my old colleague, Bjørn Bobby Pedersen from the Danish Maritime Authority. So Bjørn, if you're here, what can you tell us about the Digital at Sea International Conference? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you, Omar.
You have the floor. You have the floor.
Going through it, right? First of all, thank you for the word again today for you, Omar, and for the organizers. And I would like to start to congratulate Korea with this great conference we are part of now. I think you have showed great resilience with the technical difficulties yesterday, that you have overcome them, and you were agile and showed us that even though we have sometimes technical challenges, we can overcome. And I think it's been some great presentations and showcases we have seen so far. I will indeed tell a bit about our dreams and ideas and ambitions with Digital at Sea International, and the change from e-navigation on the way to digital at sea. Next slide, please. So, as many of you know, we have had, I think, 8 or 10 sessions of e-navigation on the way in the last 10 years. Last year, the steering committee behind decided that we'll try to transform or rebrand the concept a bit into digital at sea. And I think that transformation is in great progress. This is the first step taken on that road from Korea, and congratulated on that. Next slide, please. The reason why we from DMA side think it could be good to have a bit of rebranding of our very successful conference series we have had for many years is that the ones of us who have joined earlier, I think we can all agree it's been some very successful conferences with a lot of ideas exchanged and discussions made. Next slide, please. But I think also most of us, when we started 10 years ago, we have hoped that we will have a bit of more implementation at this time down the road. So we think we need to go, move into a next phase in order to get some more implementation out of this. So we've heard about clusters, but with the conference series, we also think it could be good to move into a next phase. Next slide, please. The global rollout of all the great ideas is not totally there yet. So next slide, please. We have proposed, and it's now well underway, that we need to have a new broadening scope, and we need some new people on board. Keep all the good people that have been participating so far, but in order to go from the idea phase and more into implementation, we need also to have some new people on board. And we are proposing for our international conference a new format also for discussing the way ahead. I will dive into this a bit. Next slide, please. So e-navigation have so far been at the center of our conferences and our discussions. And I think there has been a lot of good collaboration around the world in this area, and it has spearheaded digitalization across country. So e-navigation will still be spearheading the initiatives here. Next slide, please. But as the evolution have developed, new subjects have come on board and been relevant. So the new wider scope is maritime digitalization, and we've got some of these new topics already at this conference, and also in the latest versions that digital solution for decarbonization that I was so lucky to chair yesterday. One of them, some of these topics have still been on the agenda for some years. The coastal state's role in a digital environment, and competences for the seafarers and for the maritime workers, Gillian was talking about as well. The regulation, what do we do with that in the digital world here? Harmonization, cybersecurity have already been on the topics today. So some of these topics we have been talking about for years, but some of them are newer. So we think that a wide scope like this could be beneficial for the agenda of maritime digitalization. Next slide, please. New people. It's not to replace the old people, new and old. I think the new people can be old as well. It's not really their point. Can I have you go on that slide? But to a certain degree, I think we have had a bit of preaching to the converted, that the part of the community that has been part of the e-navigation on the way series have been very engaging, and been everyone part of this digitalization and e-navigation, and have been eluding each other, and I think in order to go for implementation, we also need some more people on board. Next slide, please. So maybe we need some of the non-believers. We want to bring people together for discussions and for ways ahead. So some of the gatekeepers and key holders for implementation, that not all of them have been part of this series and conferences before. We want to bring them on board as well. Maybe some more regulators and commercial interests. It's been part of it, but we need more of that. And next slide, please. Format-wise, we like to put the dialogue in focus. When talking to people about our e-navigation under international conference that have been held on cruise ships for several years, a lot of the feedback goes that it's a lot of the coffee breaks and even the drinks at night in the cruise ship bar is some of the important elements of the conference, where news and ideas are being exchanged, and people are getting pushed and moved to another place. So we like to put that part in focus. Next slide, please. And put people together and eye to eye to discuss common challenges, barriers, and solutions, where discussion and dialogue is in focus. Next slide, please. And make room for both disagreement and collaboration. That it's not all people who are disciples of e-navigation who are gathered, but also people who are skeptical. Of course, people who are important for the implementation, but we would like to bring people on board, so we can have both disagreement and hear from the ones who are not convinced yet, and try to collaborate and find a common way forward. The next slide, please. So, all in all, this leads to my conclusion and the first Digital at Sea International Conference. When we talked about this last time at the IALA symposium in Rotterdam, we had hoped that we could gather people physically in Denmark in the beginning of next year, in January or early February. But given the current situation with COVID-19, we don't think that we can get people from all around the world to come to Copenhagen, not least to be locked in on a cruise ship together yet in 4 months' time. So even though we regret it or we are a bit disappointed on the state of the world, we have postponed our conference, the first physical conference, to early 2023. So we like this slot in the beginning of the year to be part of setting the agenda for a new year. And we hope that many of you in that time can join us face-to-face in Denmark for some good discussions and some identification of challenges and some new collaboration to find a way for implementation of digital solutions. So with that, once again, a thanks to Korea and the team behind this conference, and I hope many of you will join us in Denmark in due time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Björn. Thank you. See, I'm not muted now. Am I coming through to the studio?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Good. Thank you very much, Björn. And I'm quite convinced that under your excellent leadership and as the innovation manager, you will innovate and make this a great event. Look forward to participate there too, and hopefully physically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. So now I mentioned 2 events in this in the series of Digital at Sea conferences, apart from this one, Asia Pacific that is, and that is Digital at Sea North America. I would like to ask Mr. Ed Wendland from RTCM to tell us something about Digital at Sea North America. Ed, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Omar.
Yeah.
Is my audio good?
Yep.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. My name is Ed Wendland. I'm the president of RTCM and would like to share with you the plans for the Digital at Sea North America that have been developed in concert with the U.S. and Canadian Coast Guards, mariners, industry representatives, and IALA. The last e-navigation underway North America conference was held in November of 2019. Although it was less than 2 years ago and just before the pandemic began, it seems much longer than that. And it's worth reviewing the conference topics to refresh our collective memory of our recent focus, the conclusions, and the recommendations from the conference. I will also present the theme and program for the upcoming conference, the future conference plans. So the theme and tagline of the last conference were enabling e-navigation today and tomorrow, and building the infrastructure and reaping the benefits. So, okay, I see that maybe we should advance. Yes, please, next slide. And on to the next one, please. Very good, thank you. So we were very fortunate to have excellent keynote and luncheon speakers. We had the Deputy Commandant for Operations of the U.S. Coast Guard, the Secretary General of IALA, and the Deputy Commissioner of Operations for the Canadian Coast Guard. Next slide, please. One of the goals of the conference steering committee was to ensure broad participation across all maritime interests, commercial mariners, fleet operators, government agencies, port authorities, and academia. The steering committee prioritized the topics of greatest interest and grouped them into the 3 sessions, and an outline of session 1 and 2 are shown here. Session 1 covered many of the significant infrastructure requirements that are still to be developed or implemented to deal with the information management framework. The material conveyed a sense of when and how those initiatives will affect activities, and the presentations discussed supporting services such as communication links and how information is to be presented. Session 2 on North American governmental plans and programs acknowledged government's role as a significant stakeholder of the supporting infrastructure for digitalization. Covering both Canadian and US activities in this session is particularly important given the shared waterways in the Pacific Northwest, the Great Lakes, and the St. Lawrence Seaway. Next slide, please. Session 3 was on new technologies and tools. Many new technologies and tools present challenges to managers and mariners alike. Keeping abreast of technology changes, updates, and innovation is critical because of their impact on operations, procurement and budget, training, and a host of related factors. Understanding of new technology and tools, their uses and benefits is particularly important in order to avoid problems integrating them into the functioning systems. User understanding of the shortfalls and critical input from users to the manufacturers is an absolute necessity, and stimulating such input was a high priority goal for the session. And session 4 was a closing session and responsible for reviewing the key points raised in preceding sessions, providing for a discussion of points raised, and formulating the conclusions and recommendations for submission to IALA and further distribution. We allowed 5 to 10 minutes for each session moderator to summarize his or her session, and this process worked extremely well and helped us remain focused and capture the feedback from each session. Next slide, please. So the conclusions are shown here. I'm not going to read through all those just in the interest of time, and hopefully you can take a look at them at your leisure as you see the materials. Here's the remaining 9 conclusions, but more importantly, next slide, please. I'll just give that a moment. And then on to the recommendations, next slide, which is what we found the most critical part. So these recommendations were developed. The first was automated ship reporting systems should allow countries to continue to receive the PDF forms created out of the ship reporting database. And second, considering the use of future standards for route plan exchange as a basis and integrate other elements, data elements as extensions to this standard. Cybersecurity needs to be considered, including a framework for secure identity management. Existing data standards need to be enhanced. The IMO Common Maritime Data Structures, such as the S100s, are to be used to ensure compatibility between different data sets. I think many of those we've heard about in these sessions. Some of those are not so important anymore, but it shows that we're closely aligned with a lot of the international and Asia Pacific needs. Next slide, please. Also important to our group of attendees was any activities need to ensure they consider improving standardization for the maritime domain. The maritime services expansions should be worked on to ensure harmonization. Continued development of autonomous maritime radio devices and identities. Continue to monitor and support work by public authorities to establish compatible systems for the electronic exchange of information, and also monitor the deployment and testing of the new satellite systems coming online, such as OneWeb. Next slide, please. So on to the next conference for coming up. We have the theme of navigating our digital waterways. We want to recognize the changes that are occurring in maritime technology, the increasing availability of technology, and the new standards that are in place to support its use. So, as with everything around us, rapid change is underway. While the industry buzzword is digitalization, not just here at sea, but all around us. And as standards organizations, RTCM and IALA, can facilitate and to a degree lead the discussion about when, where, and why maritime industry stakeholders should be plugging in and how the new standards can improve the safety and efficiency of their operations. The first session planned includes strategic implementation, the IALA Digital at Sea update, and an IHO developments. The second session we're planning will have North American governmental plans and programs, which is represented by the listed agencies. The National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration and the Canada Hydrographic Service plan to discuss developments related to S100 in the US and Canada. Overall, the first two sessions are designed to evoke answers to the questions. What's your plan? When will it happen? What's happening now? What are the benefits? And how can partners contribute? Next slide, please. Next slide. So we have 3 remaining sessions, and they will address digitalization on the horizon and today. The topics include VDES and its potential with ASM and PNT solutions. Related to this session, RTCM has recently started a special committee 138 on ranging mode application for VHF data exchange system. And we are working with IALA on this too. On the next session, we're talking about e-navigation via low Earth orbit satellites, broadcast notice to mariners via the web, WAMS 2.0, the River Information Service, underkeel clearance, weather via ship, and weather via AIS from shore, and also the Antigua single window reporting system. And that will and the final report will wrap up this session. Next slide, please. So we have had challenges with COVID as everyone else, the ongoing pandemic, but we're forging ahead, and we've just recently confirmed plans to host a conference on the 25th and 26th of January 2022. The venue will be in Tampa, Florida, and the details will be released shortly. So please mark your calendars for January 25th and 26th of 2022. As you can imagine, it's been very dynamic, but I think we have a good plan going forward to safely hold the conference. Plans for future conferences, we wanted to make sure we select dates that minimize conflict with the other conferences, and also the government fiscal year start, which has been a challenge in the past. We would like to alternate the conference location between the US and Canada, and have come to early agreements on this, where we will hold it in conjunction with the Canadian Mariners Workshop every other year. We would also like to include Mexico. We've reached out to potential delegates from Mexico through IEC, port authorities, and others, but have yet to establish contact with interested members of the maritime community there. Should you have any contacts, I would very much like to hear from you so that we may include them. And the final slide is a hearty thank you to everyone that made this conference such a success. Hats off to South Korea and all the participants. And we look forward to seeing you at Digital at Sea North America. Thank you, Omar.
Well, thank you, Ed. Thank you very much. That was quite interesting. The next conference has a lot of very interesting topics that are well worth traveling for, hopefully.
Yes.
So thank you. So moving on now, we will continue with the adoption of a few conference highlights. And Mr. Hong, would you please take the floor and present the conference highlights as identified by you and your team?
Yes, of course, sure, Mr. Omar. I also hope to come to Tampa to participate in the Digitalization Conference North America next year. I hopefully like to do that. Okay, we have a draft conference highlight here. This highlight draft was drafted by help of Mr. Michael Bergman from Bergman Marine. So thank you so much for his very beautiful highlighting drafting the highlights of this conference. So we are going to review the highlights sentence by sentence. So we are going to read one sentence at a time and receive some comments to correct. And also Ms. Jo is going to help us to correct the draft sentence according to the comments made by our participant, if any. Okay, I'm going to start. Let's review sentence by sentence. Highlights of the Digital SC Asia Pacific 2021 conference. The first edition of the Digital Sea Asia Pacific Conference, which replaces the former Navigation the Way Conference Asia Pacific from 2017 to 2020, was virtually held under the term Leading Digitalization of Maritime Industry on 8 to 9 September 2021 in Sejong, City, Republic of Korea. 800 participants from more than 50 countries participate in this conference. These figures is based on the website registered to our digital platform this time. Is there any comment? I believe there is no comment on this sentence. This is a very normal thing. And second sentence, wishing to increase international cooperation in harmonizing and facilitating marine digitalization and decarbonization industry for the sake of enhancing maritime safety and efficiency as well as shared growth among regions. Noting that Digital Sea initiative under the umbrella of IALA consists of series of Digital Sea conferences replacing the former series of navigation on the way conferences, Digital Sea clusters, and capacity building workshop. Is there any comments? No. The conference adopts its highlight as follows. 1. The conference discussed the cutting-edge technologies and industries related to marine digitalization, focusing on global harmonization, data connectivity, and interoperability among them, as well as decarbonization through them, mainly in navigation, mass, cybersecurity, maritime informatics, and maritime connectivity platform. Any comment? Opening session, when setting the theme for the conference, the importance of digitalization, digital data exchange, and international collaboration in the maritime domain was highlighted. Session 1, Maritime Digital Transformation for Decarbonization. In the first session, the correlation between digitalization and the efforts for decarbonization of shipping was illustrated. It was made clear that the digital transformation, especially with the aspect of ship traffic management and the advent of just-in-time arrival in ports, will support environmental footprint reduction of the marine transport sector. Is there any comment? No comment. Session 2, platform focus on informatics. When looking at existing and evolving platforms enabling digital data exchange, the aspect of interoperability across the globe as highlighted. This isn't seen as a pure technical issue, but cooperation between organizations above and beyond the regulatory requirement will be needed. This in conjunction with interoperable platforms like MCP and the use of international standards like portable messages and route exchange will be paramount for success. Is there any comment?
Mr. Hong,
Yes.
I suggest that maybe the word you have highlighted as should be was. Across the globe was highlighted. I think that would sound better.
Thank you so much. Are you okay like this?
Yes, good, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Hong, Yu from BIMCO, I have a comment as well.
Yes. Okay, we corrected like this.
I think it's very important that during the presentations we have had over the past couple of days, the IMO reference data model has been mentioned several times. I think it's appropriate that that we mention that somehow in the focus on informatics and exchange of information.
So are you suggesting that we add a couple of sentences or just one sentence regarding the IMO?
Yes, I propose that you add one or maybe two sentences reflecting that in this collaboration it is necessary to when possible include reference to the IMO reference data model.
Is this okay? Do you see the screen?
Yes, IMO reference data model.
Model.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Let's move on to the next sentence. Session 3, core technology and standardization, digital data exchange, a prerequisite for navigation and for mass implementation, need high bandwidth communication, and as such additional frequency band are required for maritime mobile services. Cyber risk need to be addressed as digitalization requires resilience system. Academic research in the new maritime informatics discipline underlines the need for global cooperation to gain the benefits of digitalization. Is there any comments regarding the session 3 discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Hong. I just suggest on the second line there that you add the word allocations after additional frequency band. So it would say, and as such, additional frequency band allocations are required. I think that would sound better.
Like this?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, after band, yeah, allocations.
Mm-hmm.
Allocation.
And further on the fourth line, where you say requires resilience systems, it would sound better to say resilient with a T on the end, not CE.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that's just, yeah, at the beginning of the fourth line.
Yes.
That's it, requires resilient, so replace CE with T.
Yes.
Thank you, that looks better, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And session 4, harmonization on maritime digital transformation. IMO regulations and other documents like the IMO compendium are essential tools to ensure global interoperability of digital solutions in maritime transport. Maritime digital transformation also needs precise position information like Galileo, HS. The implementation of the new technology and processes only will be successful if the people involved are properly trained. It has to be realized that full digitalization is expected as Maritime 4.0 in about 2035 will have to include non-solar vessels. Maritime digital implementation needs a global operation cluster, starting with the cluster between Europe and Korea. This is a summary. Gillian?
Yes, I think you, right where your marker is, that should be ensure instead of onshore.
Yes.
Okay, this is Manuel Lopez. I would like to simply say that it's Galileo has, Galileo HAS. So please add an A. Galileo has.
HAS.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
High accuracy service.
Yes.
Galileo high accuracy service. Thank you.
Okay, this is a summary. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just on that point, I wonder if it's worth spelling out that, because that acronym might not be familiar to the general readers, so maybe saying Galileo High Accuracy Service with HAS in brackets.
Yes.
Just so it's clear, thank you.
That's good.
Is there a hyphen in between high accuracy service?
I believe there should be, but I would defer to my colleague from the EU to confirm that in
Yes.
this case.
This is okay like that. It's okay like that. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, let's move on to second paragraph. The conference recognized the necessity to build the international and inter-regional testbed cluster as a digital maritime ecosystem for making global collaboration and harmonization of maritime digitalization by validating and verifying the emerging marine digital technologies on board ships operating between regions. Do you have any opinions, comments on this second paragraph? Okay. 3, the conference recognized that maritime digitalization should align with IMO's visions as expressed in the e-navigation strategy implementation plan, but also the work on just-in-time, IMO compendium, and other aspects. It also needs to use the IALA's technical service guideline and IHO's 100 standards as the basis for common maritime data structure, and in conjunction with the IMO compendium, so as to maximize the benefit of digitalization to all stakeholders. And the testbed need to be goal-based cooperation under the MOU for implementing the tested digital technologies in maritime sectors and putting into placing them at IMO's document.
Just one comment in the second line. The document is called the e-navigation strategy implementation plan, not strategic implementation plan. So on the second line.
So you're happy for us to kick off the public career.
And fourth line, the common maritime spellings with tip maritime. Okay, thank you. Therefore, the conference recognized the need for increased collaboration across stakeholders, countries, and the regions to support that benefits of digitalization, especially safety, efficiency, and decarbonization of maritime transport are being realized.
Mr. Hong, I think the second line where it says support that should be to support the benefits of digitalization. So countries and regions to support the benefits of digitalization.
Yeah, okay, good.
That doesn't fit with realized then, though.
Oh, yeah, that's true, yeah.
Okay.
To support the realization of benefits.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I understand, Julian. Yeah, you're right, that does sound better. So, sorry, yeah, keep it as it was. That does sound, yeah. Yeah, that's very true.
Well, I guess we also can have both support that benefits of.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, that's clearer.
Yeah, that's better. To support the realization of benefits.
Yeah,
Need to get rid of the last one.
That eliminate the last three words.
Yeah, the last, yeah.
Get rid of that now. To support the realization of benefits of digitalization, especially safety and efficiency.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank
Would
you.
it also be all right to go back to the previous? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, that's clear. Also, paragraph 3, I'm a bit concerned about the last sentence because I don't really understand what it's saying, but I'm trying to think of a way of fixing it. The test beds need to be it might sound better to say the test beds need to be a goal-based cooperation. So that would make it slightly clearer. So if we said, and the test bed, sorry, the last, third to last line, yeah, that sentence is sounding not very clear to me. I don't know if anyone else thinks the same. The test beds need to be a goal-based cooperation under the MOU for implementing the tested digital technologies in maritime sectors. And then the very last bit sounds strange. I don't understand whether we're putting them or placing them in IMO documents or if we're using IMO documents for reference. But I might need some help with that because I'm not quite sure what that sentence is trying to say. We could say in IMO documents. In IMO's documents would sound slightly better.
Yes.
Yeah, and placing them in IMO's documents.
It's a bit redundant.
Said that.
Any other suggestions?
Yeah. Yeah, I think if we said that, the sentence then makes sense, but I just want to check
Yes.
that is what was intended, that was all.
Mm.
I think that makes sense to me as well. Phil?
Good, thanks, Mike.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to the paragraph 5. The conference realized that technology and procedures need educated, well-trained people, the human capital, to utilize shared data and execute designed procedure, sorry. Yeah. Any comments? Lillian?
I'm trying to understand it.
Okay, thank you. Number 6.
I'm not, just one second, I'm trying to get my head around what it's trying to say. I'm not sure I quite understand what it's trying to say yet.
Yeah.
You could maybe turn it around and say the conference realized that the human capital is essential. The conference realized that educated, well-trained people, the human capital, is essential for sharing data and executing procedures. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to make, it didn't make sense as it was written. Are essential for sharing data, effectively using technology, and implementing the procedures. Okay, that would work.
Does that make sense?
Just waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's good, except for the is should be an R.
Yes.
Well-trained people are
Are.
essential.
Okay, very good.
So the human capital would be an is, but well-trained people would be an are. It reads better as an R. Thank you.
Well-trained people, the human capital are essential for sharing data?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with that, yes.
Just the spelling
Thanks,
on
Julian.
procedures.
Yeah. You'll fix procedures, spellings later, right?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
There's an extra E in procedures at the moment.
Yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be that there is a slight lag, so you get the changes maybe a few seconds later than when we make the changes, so bear with us.
Okay, next, number 6. The conference recognized that the smart navigation in Korea established e-navigation and expanded it in the non-SOLAS domain.
Just into, I think, would sound better. Expanded it into the non-SOLAS domain.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments?
Okay, the last sentence. Discussion during the conference suggested bring the concept of digital edge initiative to the attention of IMO with the aim of providing an opportunity for more countries to participate in this initiative. Yeah, it would be very necessary to inform IMO at the level of IALA or joint information paper to a adequate IMO meetings. Is there any comment? No comment. Anyway, the Omar,
Yes.
we mic back to you again for your summary or some more information.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Sun Bei. So now we have the conference highlights as discussed here. But if someone has any further comments to these highlights, then please provide them through email before the 18th of September, 1818. You can send your comments to the conference secretariat, and the email can be found in the conference brochure and on the conference website, I believe. So thank you for that, and microphone back to you, to the studio.
So thank you once again for closing up our last and final session. And I believe that we also turn to Mr. Omar Fritz Eriksson once again, the Deputy Secretary General of IALA, for our closing remarks.
Yes, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have now witnessed 2 days of excellent and very interesting presentations. At the outset, we learned about the 2 Ds, decarbonization and digitalization, which go hand in hand. I would like to move into the third dimension and add yet another D for digital data sharing and data analytics, since the sharing of information is key to achieving the results we're looking for. So, what kind of results are we looking for? Well, for one, seamless, efficient, and secure digital connectivity worldwide is a very important enabler for everything. We're looking for improvements in safety of navigation, improvement in transport chain efficiency, reduced environmental impact, improved welfare for the seafarers. And I guess that the word sustainability sums all this up nicely, actually, and is perhaps the core goal, which is well worth pursuing. As we have heard, we have an ocean of technical solutions and concepts supporting our journey towards our goals. We have heard about just-in-time arrival strategies and how they can reduce cost and environmental impact. We have heard about the standardization work being done in IALA, IMO, and efforts by the European Union and others, BIMCO, KRISO. There's a lot going on. The Maritime Connectivity Platform is a promising concept, which seems to have gained traction. And could be the fundamental infrastructure for connectivity worldwide. We have learned about the Digital at Sea cluster, which is perfect for driving innovation in this field. As has been mentioned, a new academic discipline was born recently, Maritime Mathematics. And the first professor worldwide in this discipline is present at this conference, Professor Michael Lind. This is an important development which enables us to take an even more academic approach and will encourage researchers to dive even deeper into the challenges we face, deepening our understanding and ability to overcome these challenges. As the professor said, it is all about balancing capital productivity and energy efficiency. So we have a lot of tools in the toolbox, and we have never been closer to achieving our goals, actually. than we are today. In conclusion, I would like to send many thanks to the Republic of Korea, particularly the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries, for arranging this year's Digital at Sea Asia Pacific Conference. I'm also very grateful for the leadership by Korea in this field. We have benefited a lot from that over the years and hopefully into the future. The Smart Navigation project was a really, really good initiative. Well done, Sun Bai Hong and your excellent team. I know they have been working very hard behind the scenes. Also, thank you to all the presenters and our excellent participants who have witnessed what has been going on here and will take a lot of interesting conclusions away with them. Keep safe. See you face to face as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar, for your beautiful closing remarks. With that, I officially close the 5th Digital at Sea Asia Pacific Conference 2021. Thank you all of the speakers and participants for your very fruitful discussion, also valuable input in this conference. See you next year. Thank you so much. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.